Jackson Cantwell spurns Missouri, at least for now. Let's talk about the ramifications on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. On today's program, I'm going to talk about a couple more Missouri football players entering the transfer portal, plus Dennis Gates. Going to need to find two new assistant basketball coaches. Do want to quickly remind you that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And you know what? I may even get to some Nico Iamaleava at some point in the program, but I do want to start by talking about Mizzou legacy Jackson Cantwell, Nixa, Missouri high schooler, of course, son of Christian Cantwell, the former Olympic gold medalist in the shot put. Great Missouri Tiger. Well, unfortunately, Christian Cantwell cut down his schools to his top four, and Missouri did not make the cut. Somewhat surprisingly from my perspective, though. I do have to say I do kind of respect the honesty. I think in a lot of cases, well, not only a hometown kid, but a kid who obviously is the son of a former Missouri Tiger, you might expect that he would just keep Missouri in there even until the end, even if he weren't truly considering the Tigers. So I do respect that honesty in a strange way. I really do. But Georgia, Oregon, Miami, and Ohio State are the final four there for Cantwell. Obviously some big, heavy hitters there, not only just in terms of wins on the football field, but name, image, and likeness as well. And it does sort of lead me to the question, is the Missouri NIL game, is it not quite at the same level it was maybe a year or two ago this time around? I think that's a fair question, but once again, I don't want to make too many assumptions here. Obviously, Cantwell could have a million reasons here for not considering Mizzou here, at least at the very end. Obviously, Cantwell did consider Missouri, visited multiple times, but in the end, obviously, he's not going to end up at Missouri, at least for now. And I do want to stress that just a little bit, especially for any of you who are maybe a little bit sharp-tongued out there in social media and maybe want to give the young man a taste of your mind. Well, first of all, it's about the least classy idea I've ever heard in my entire life. But second of all, let's not shoot ourselves in the foot for the sake of saving your face, whatever the analogy is that I just butchered there. But the point here is that you never know. In this world of the transfer portal, when there are guys like Toriano Pride, for example, a guy that Missouri really wanted out of high school, ends up at Clemson for a couple years. Well, guess where he ended up back? He ends up back at the University of Missouri. So the point here is Jackson Cantwell, hey, go get your bag from Oregon or Georgia and then come back to us in a year or two, where we'll have another fine bag waiting for you as well. But in all seriousness, in this day and age, really, who knows what could happen here in the future. But I do have to wonder, Jackson Cantwell, that is, the younger, obviously a really good shot putter in his own right for those of you who have been following his high school recruitment at all. And I do wonder how much Missouri's lack of investment in the track and field program, well, certainly at least compared to Oregon, for example, who is a massive player in that space. You wonder how much that did factor into Cantwell's decision-making here, because there is a chance that during college, Cantwell could try his hand at the Olympic Games before moving on to the NFL. You never know. So that really could be an actual factor there and not just lip service. So obviously from a Missouri fan's perspective, this is disappointing news. It's not every year that you get the best offensive lineman rated in the entire country, one of the absolute best players in the entire country, coming from within state and from a guy who is a Missouri legacy at that. So to not make even the Final Four here, a real disappointment. At the same time, seems like I'm answering this question a lot lately, but no, Kent Brockman, I don't believe there is anything to panic about just yet. And speaking of Missouri legacies, it was announced online, at least reported online, that Joe Moore has entered the transfer portal. Joe Moore, an edge rusher, son of former great Missouri running back from the Dan Devine era, Joe Moore of the same name. Well, I got to say, the son, Joe Moore, here on the edge, I was under the impression that he was out of eligibility. And in fact, the Missouri roster would lead you to believe that online at mutigers.com as well. So according to his game log on ESPN.com, Moore appeared in at least 2 games, recorded statistics in at least 2 games, I should say. So if he appeared in more than 4 games, then I don't see how he's going to be able to get a red shirt back, for instance. But I have to say, at this point, all of the rules post Diego Pavia, there was a Division II player that had said, hey, this shouldn't count against my eligibility in Division I, II, and, well, the courts agreed with that player as well. So it seems like there are a lot of guys, including Joe Moore, including Josh Gray on the basketball side, who are announcing that they're entering the portal sort of just in case there might be some loophole or another lawsuit that comes about that gives them extra eligibility. And I do think it's kind of interesting how in a world where it's very safe for commentators, journalists, that type of thing, to always just say to side with the players no matter what. Well, in this case, when you're just saying that, hey, guys should be able to just endlessly be in college, essentially, well, is that a pro player or is that an anti-young player stance? It's more nuanced than just being pro player, because you're sort of arguing that the older players get an advantage here versus the younger 18-year-old guys here, the guys who are being recruited from high school. A lot of these guys had their 4, 5, 6, even 7 years to play college football and basketball, and in many cases had multiple years to make NIL money as well. Well, where is the fairness in the other side of that equation? If we're talking about fairness and equity and equality, well, but where's the fairness for the young guys? When do they get their chance at this whole system as well? So again, just another variable there among many to think about during this whole new process and figuring out where the heck it's going to go in the future. And one other transfer portal note here, Talan Chandler, formerly of Nevada High School, Nevada, Missouri. Speaking of, I guess, relatively small Missouri high schools there, an offensive lineman. Well, Chandler wasn't the most ballyhooed prospect in the world nationally, though at the center position, he was fairly highly ranked. Just sort of goes to show you that center, not the most valued position coming from high school, and Chandler, at least so far, has not been able to get to, well, second string, for instance. In this spring camp here with Connor Tollison recovering from an injury, Chandler not your center during the spring, so perhaps the writing on the wall there, despite the fact that he did see one bit of game action last year against UMass, preserving his red shirt, so he would have still been a red shirt freshman and still will be a red shirt freshman, presuming he's with a new team this fall. So again, Talan Chandler, offensive lineman, entering the portal as well. And after 3 years with Missouri, C.Y. Young is heading back home. And I have to say, this is probably Dennis Gates' most important assistant. I don't think that's going out on a limb whatsoever. So what exactly does this mean? Let's talk about C.Y. Young heading back to Miami in just a little bit. But first, there is nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every stop, every moment just feels huge. And with Gametime, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. The all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And the Florida man, C.Y. Young, is heading back to Florida, to the University of Miami to be exact. And while this one stings a little bit, it's kind of hard to blame Coach Young. I don't know if he's homesick, but he's certainly going back to his hometown. Certainly couldn't blame him as a Florida man for, well, getting a little bit sick of Mid-Missouri winners and perhaps Mid-Missouri spring wind the last few weeks. And quite honestly, you know, Dennis Gates and C.Y. Young talked a lot about their friendship and that how if one of them got a head coaching job, the other one would go with them and help them get it off the ground, essentially. Well, he gave Dennis 3 seasons, 2 NCAA appearances in 3 seasons. It's really tough to ask for much more than that. And a guy who was kind of called the shot doctor around campus, a guy who, by all accounts, turned around Kobe Brown and Sean East's three-point shooting percentages in a big way, probably helped Kobe Brown earn a bunch of money at the NBA level, I would say, without question. So Kobe Brown owes C.Y. Young a huge debt of gratitude at the very least. At the same time, while I think Young is going to be a tough guy to replace. Rob Summers, by the way, after 1 year as an assistant with Missouri, off to Cleveland State to be their head coach. But while obviously not an ideal situation for Dennis Gates to have to be looking for 2 assistant coaches at this moment, it's not exactly a huge shock either. Again, I'm sure C.Y. Young didn't just blindside his buddy Dennis Gates with this decision. And by the way, Rob Summers leaving to be a head coach when he was an assistant coach at a bigger program, well, that's the type of move that happens every single day and year throughout college sports. So really nothing to really be overly concerned about. You just hope that Dennis Gates can hire some good assistants. What exactly that means is largely up to him. I'm not exactly an expert and have a long list of binders full of assistant coaches or anything like that. So I'll leave that one up to Dennis Gates and his judgment. By the way, don't be surprised if another Miami product, Marcus Allen, of course, the former Tiger freshman, don't be surprised if he ends up with the Hurricanes and C.Y. Young as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Peyton Marshall ended up there as well. I believe Young was the main recruiter of Marshall, if memory serves there correctly. But I think especially Marcus Allen, I would probably put some money down. If FanDuel offered me any odds whatsoever, I think I would probably take him on Marcus Allen ending up with the Miami Hurricanes. But that is just a big guess from me. And by the way, I've been talking quite a bit about the high school quarterback market and if Missouri actually needs to get in it this time around. Well, 3-star quarterback Ryan Hopkins has committed to Wisconsin. He, along with, I would say, Gavin Sidwar, is probably the 2 guys who Missouri is the most connected to right now. But this is an ongoing trend of guys that Missouri in the high school recruiting class for this upcoming high school class 26. Well, each and every time these guys end up committing elsewhere. So instead of settling for a quarterback who probably is unlikely to ever suit up for you, I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world if you save that spot for a position frankly, in the transfer portal. Don't even necessarily worry about high school, though you could certainly, hey, if you're going to find me a great lineman or edge rusher with that extra spot in high school that you really like, by all means. But I think it makes even more sense to actually carry that position over, that scholarship spot, your roster spot, whatever you want to call it, and actually not use a quarterback at that position. And really, you go back and look at some recent high school quarterback history, and even at the very, very top of the food chain, the top 5 is where I somewhat arbitrarily just cut it off here. Well, you got a real mixed bag in terms of actual results here. The 2023 class, who was number 1? Well, none other than Nico Iamaleava. Well, he's been all over the news the last couple days as he basically is holding up Tennessee in spring practice for more money. And, well, the Volunteers and Josh Heupel called his bluff and said, hit the bricks, basically. Go hit that dusty trail and good luck to you. I don't think they actually added the good luck part. But regardless, you had Nico number 1, who I would say is middle of the pack in the SEC last season in terms of quarterbacks. Hey, he's at least a starter. Then you got Arch Manning, number 2, Jackson Arnold. How do we feel about Jackson Arnold? A lot of questions there. Dante Moore and Malachi Nelson at USC. A lot of incomplete grades there. Hey, guess who was number 1 in the 2022 class? None other than Devin Brown, the Ohio State backup quarterback in the 2023 Cotton Bowl, actually the starter in that game. Every Ohio State fan, every national fan acted like Missouri was absurd for actually celebrating a game where Devin Brown started at quarterback. Well, he was the number 1 player at quarterback in 2022, at least according to On3. So again, this is just so far from an exact science whatsoever. I will say the surprising part about some of this, 2021, the conventional wisdom is, well, that should have been a year where it would have been almost impossible to recruit, right? The COVID season, the COVID era, everybody having to talk on Zooms. Well, number 1, Caleb Williams ends up the number 1 pick of the NFL draft. Quinn Ewers takes Texas to the playoff. Jackson Dart, a starter with Ole Miss. Yes, he melted down against Florida, I know. But still, Kyle McCord, a guy who started for Ohio State, then transferred to Syracuse as a starter, and then finally Drake May, North Carolina, now with the New England Patriots, their presumed quarterback of the future. So, again, everybody just thought in 2021, well, there's going to be a whole bunch of misses here. In fact, that was the best season of all of probably the last 5 years that I've looked at here starting in 2023. So the point here is that if the top 5 to even top 10, if you want to expand it out there, if that's all a bit of a coin flip, well, how much more of a coin flip does it get when you get down to the 3-star level, when you get past the top 20 or so? Now you're talking about guys that even if they do hit, realistically, are you going to be patient enough to keep them on your roster long enough? Are they going to be patient enough to stick around and wait for a year or two? Frankly, I think a whole lot of conventional wisdoms about the quarterback position, development, recruitment, and by the way, from their perspective as well, from the actual high school players' position as well, I want to go somewhere where I can play. What does it do for me to just sit on the bench and rot for a season or two? I'd almost rather go to Northwest Missouri State my freshman year if I can at least start and go somewhere and start getting those reps early, and then guess what? I can transfer every year anyway. But again, bottom line from Missouri's perspective, do you want a quarterback in the 2026 cycle? Yes, but do you have to have one? I don't think so, especially in a world where an Aiden Glover-like prospect who needs some time to develop, well, those guys just aren't really sticking around anymore. So, again, I ask, what's the point? And coming up, could Chase Daniel be the next general manager? Well, I should say first general manager of the Missouri Tigers in history. Dennis Gates looking for one officially at this point. Plus, it really is starting to seem like Luther Burden really is going to drop out of the first round. I got to say that surprises me, but we'll talk about it all in a minute. But first, you ever check that bank account and wonder, where the heck did all my money go between dining out, online shopping? It's easy to lose track. Well, that's where Monarch Money steps in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center, tracking all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So just stop managing your money and start building wealth, all in one convenience, easy collaboration. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year. Now, there was some literal fake news on Facebook traveling around in the last few weeks about Chase Daniel being the next offensive coordinator at the University of Missouri. Well, again, to reemphasize, fake news, ladies and gentlemen. But Chase fanned the flames of some own rumors here recently. Tigers putting out the idea, or somebody put out the idea that, well, Missouri could be looking for a football general manager here. Chase Daniel basically saying, hey, guys, I'm right here. Well, I'll be honest, this is just Chase Daniel, I would assume, just doing social media very well, as he often does. But I will say this, while I assume that Chase is going to just keep on with his budding television and broadcasting career here, he makes a heck of a lot more sense than these current NBA players, for example, who are signing on to general manager roles. Like Trae Young is now I'm supposed to believe he's the general manager of the Oklahoma Sooners. What are we even talking about here? So in his spare time, Trae Young is scouting high school players and players in the mid-majors that the Sooners might want to pluck in the transfer portal. That is just, I'm not even sure. This is the new thing of, like, when Patrick Mahomes is the minority owner of the Kansas City Royals. Sure, he doesn't have any actual power, but he sure looks cool in a Royals uniform up in the owner's box, doesn't he? That's kind of what this seems like to me. But to the idea that Missouri is officially, I believe the basketball program is basically officially put it out there. Yes, indeed, we are looking for a general manager. I think this is a must. To have not a ceremonial position like Trae Young, but to have an actual human being who is in charge of, frankly, a whole department of people that are in charge of looking at the rest of college basketball, obviously high school scouting as well. But really, you've almost needed an entirely new department of people to keep up with the rest of college basketball and football, not only just the lay of the land in terms of who you think's good, who you think's bad, but who's available, what's their market, what are they asking for? I mean, all of this stuff is just, frankly, way too much to expect a head coach or assistant coaches to be able to manage, especially during a season. It's absurd. There's no chance that the coaches can be expected to put on this much more responsibility. It's utterly unrealistic considering the stretching of their time that already exists. So I definitely agree that Missouri should get a general manager, if you want to call it that. I think it's just going to be somebody other than Chase Daniel. Certainly any current Missouri players, I'm like Michael Porter Jr., I think we're good on you being the general manager of the team, bud. Let's just let's squash that idea right now before it even gets there. And finally, Todd McShay, who has been passing along a lot of the negative thoughts about Luther Burden III entering the draft. Well, he put out his latest mock draft, and Luther Burden not in the first round, which, again, surprising to me. At this point, I think I have to believe it. right? I'm not going to question the intel at this point. McShay is not, it's not like he's trying to push Luther Burden down the board, as some people have sort of suggested. But it seems like there's just more of a thought that this is not a great wide receiver class with only 2 guys going in the first round, according to McShay. Again, we'll see what happens in the actual draft. I'll just say this. It's hard for me to – I'm not a draft expert. It's hard for me to parse where Burden ranks compared to the rest of the wide receivers in the country. I'll just say this. Once again, I'll take Luther Burden III on my team. I really will. Whatever concerns are out there about his production last season, about his attitude off the field, I just have never seen anything that is that big of a red flag, especially on the field, but even off the field. I'm just not seeing what I think maybe other people are trying to talk themselves into. So, hey, Luther Burden, if he ends up being a second rounder, maybe a late first rounder, and goes to a good team with a good quarterback, well, this could all be a blessing in disguise. At least that's what I'm hoping happens for a great Tiger. And speaking of great Tigers, definitely check out my interview with Kareem Rush on yesterday's program. Had a blast with Kareem. Talked about, well, his evolving relationship with Quinn Snyder over the years, Kobe Bryant, his favorite Missouri teammates, all kinds of fun with Kareem on yesterday's program. But as always, thanks for making Locked On Mizzou your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On the NFL Draft on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. So until next time, I'm John Miller, and thanks for listening to Locked On Mizzou.